The village was old, very old. The paths were made of cobblestones. They were worn down by time. The villagers knew all the stories. The stories were passed down through generations. One story was about a ghost. The ghost knocked on doors at midnight. No one dared to open their door. Fear hung in the air. It was as heavy as the fog that clung to the village. The villagers whispered about the ghost. They spoke in hushed tones. No one wanted to anger the spirit. The village was quiet. It was as if holding its breath. The silence was broken only by the wind. The wind howled through the trees. The trees swayed and groaned. Their branches looked like skeletal fingers. They reached out into the night. A young man named Thomas lived in the village. Thomas was curious about the ghost. He didn't believe the stories. He thought they were just silly superstitions. One evening, an old woman stopped Thomas. Her face was etched with worry. "Don't answer the door at midnight," she warned. Her voice trembled. Thomas laughed. He patted her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry," he said, "it's just a story." He didn't believe her. As the sun began to set, the village grew quiet. Shadows stretched out from every corner. The air grew colder. Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine. He closed his shutters tight. He lit a candle. The flickering flame cast dancing shadows on the wall. He tried to read a book, but he couldn't shake off the old woman's warning. The hours passed slowly. The only sound was the ticking of the clock. Then the clock chimed 12 times. Its sound echoed through the silent house. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. The sound was loud and clear. Thomas's heart jumped. He froze. The knocking came again. This time it was louder, more insistent. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't ignore it. He crept towards the door. He reached out his hand. His fingers hovered over the latch. He hesitated. His mind raced. What if the stories were true? He took a deep breath. He threw open the door. The doorway was empty. Thomas looked around. There was no one there. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been foolish to believe the stories. It was just the wind, or perhaps some village children playing a prank. As he closed the door, he noticed something on the ground. It was a small, white object. He bent down to pick it up. It was a bone, a human bone. Thomas stared at it in horror. It was then he heard a voice. It was soft and cold. It seemed to come from the bone itself. "You should have listened to the warnings," the voice whispered. "Now you have opened the door." The bone crumbled to dust in his hand, and Thomas knew. He had made a terrible mistake. The ghost wasn't knocking to get out, it was knocking to get in.